Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Laughlin. I'm the CTO at NGen. I welcome you all today. We've got a 2 and a bit hour presentation for you, so I appreciate there's a lot of information that's going to be thrown at you over the next 2 hours. We're not here for the numbers of people that are on the audience. If you want to stay for the first 15 minutes and see what we've been up to, or understand our funding streams and then drop off, whatever is appropriate, that's completely fine. And then what we'll be doing is kind of getting deeper and deeper into our process as we continue on. To begin, what I'd like to do is actually start a short poll of everyone that's here, just to understand a little bit about the audience and who we've got on. Now, the challenge I've got is launching a poll from the screen. Technical difficulties. So when I'm live, Frank and Ken, I can't launch the poll. Aha, there we go. So wanted to start by just doing a little bit of a poll to see how many people are lead applicants on today, how many people are not developing a proposal, and how many partners we've got on. Okay, fantastic. I mean, the results are coming in live here. Please keep voting, and we're almost there. We've got 85% of the vote in. 60% of you are lead applicants. There are 25% that aren't developing a proposal at this time. So I suspect when we do the hardcore deep dive into the questions, not everyone will be staying. I'm very encouraged to see partners and other collaborators on here as well. So we've got 7% partners, 2% subcontractors, and 5% academic and research institutes. That's wonderful. I will love to see those numbers being higher in the future. But that's fantastic. It's great to see some of the partners contributing into the project as well. And it's a big theme that you'll see from the presentation today, that we're really keen that the proposals are developed in that collaboration. So I wonder whether we could launch the second poll, which is just to understand the size of the funding that you're looking to access. This is important to me, just to understand how many of you are looking at kind of the main projects, how many are you looking at capacity build, the feasibility studies and pilot projects, the SME dedicated projects. I'll tailor the presentation accordingly. We do plan to hold additional workshops. In fact, we are likely to hold a workshop at about every 2 or 3 weeks, similar to this, and we hope to get the workshops more efficient and faster. So you're somewhat the guinea pigs for us on our first slide deck, but we'll refine it and hone it and make it better. And the last question of the day will be very much around the things that we can do a little bit better. So the very vast majority of you are looking at the major projects, so the 500K to 20 million. And we've got 9% looking at feasibility studies, 13% looking at pilot projects. So the majority of the information being presented today is sort of the full guidance for a whole project. I'll warn you, we have rewritten the project guide. So this is it's almost the unofficial launch of a new project guide, which will be distilling down into new feasibility study and pilot project guides as well. The guide is very much being developed to be an enhancement on the previous guides, where we've funded a number of projects now, and we've looked at all the successful ones, and we've looked at what's been unique and new, and what how have those companies that have been successful, how have they answered the questions, and we've tried to add in those enhancements where we saw something sort of different from the current guidance that could be a hint or a tip or something that you guys could use. Okay, I think we can close that poll now. That's 42% looking at $500,000 to $8 million projects and 7% looking at the $8 million plus projects. And we've got 23% looking at the smaller projects dedicated towards SMEs. So that's great. Okay, I shall. Hopefully we're on full screen now. So this is a project development workshop. We have set a bit of an agenda today. So welcome everybody. As I say, my name is John Loughlin. I'm the CTO. We've also got Christy, Ken, Gillian from the project development team, Ashley from our finance team, and Ashley will be after our first break going through some of the finances and funding. And we've also got Rhonda O'Keefe as well, who's our IP manager. And although we're not deep diving IP today, there is a slide on that. And if you don't make it to that slide, just so you know, on the 17th of November, we're doing an IP workshop where we're going to deep dive how to write your IP strategies. So the information will be on the slides, and all the slides will be available later on today. So first of all, NGen. So who are we? Lots of people think we're a government agency. We're not. We're a not-for-profit. But we're a not-for-profit that's been set up to connect Canada's strengths. I mean, we're here to connect manufacturers. Manufacturing is worth 16%. It's shrinking a bit, but it's the second largest contributor to Canada's GDP, next to rental and leasing properties. And we're here to connect technology providers. When I arrived in Canada to take on this job, I was told a fantastic statistic that Toronto created more tech jobs in, I think, 2017 than Washington, Seattle, and San Francisco combined. And that just blew my mind. That, you know, the amount of technology jobs and startups and technology providers in Canada is phenomenal. We're also here to be a connector between government. We are an industry-led, not-for-profit. We all come from an industry sector and have significant industry experience, but we are heavily connected into the government. So we want to kind of be that connector and that voice, two-way voice in between government as we take on that role. And of course, Canada is recognized globally as one of the most highly educated countries in the world, and to leverage and connect from those research organizations, the academic universities, colleges, and to leverage from that as well. So our mission, we have quite a big mission. Our mission is to build world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities in Canada. And we aim to do that by developing world-leading technological capabilities in advanced manufacturing. We want to increase industry investment and innovation, connect and actively engage members of Canada's advanced manufacturing ecosystem, contribute to the development of skilled workforce, and improve the social and well-being of Canadians. And we've been set a pretty big and bold goal. Our goal is to create $13.5 billion and 13,500 new jobs to Canada's economy by 2030, and it's 2021, so 9 years' time. And so from our funding, we have about 200 million, 204 million for project funding. We have a number of really core expected outcomes, that we have new domestic and international sales, that we create jobs, that new companies are created, that there's new products, processes, and services, and that new intellectual property is created. And IP is one of the main things that's been set within the federal government's ISI program to be something really important and something that really needs to be considered. So how are we getting on against those audacious goals? We have funded 60 projects to date. So working from top left across, that's 60 projects approved to date. That includes 136 partnering organizations with 24 academic research partners. And the lion's share of those companies are SMEs. So that's a company less than 500 employees. And that's 125 SMEs of the 136 partners. That is of our 204, 124 million of the 204, so 80 million left. That does mean the money is going to get more competitive, and you know, we'll be looking to fund the best of the best. We are going for an early renewal with the federal government, and looking to supercharge that funding and extend it in order to give consistency and stability for our project pipeline. And that 124 million has leveraged 230 million of industry funding. We also responded to COVID-19, and we've launched 36 products for COVID-19, PPE, test kits, capabilities for vaccine scale up. We've created 47 new processes, and as a running tally to date, that's supported 963 jobs, with a 10-year projection of 7,000 jobs. So we're pretty much on target to hit our 10-year targets if we expend all the money, or when we expend all the money. And for our membership, we're just shy of 3,000 NGen members. That's 1,500 manufacturers, 600 technology providers, 96 research organizations, and 89% of those are SMEs. I'll also note that 1/3 of the membership is outside Ontario. So at the minute, yes, we have quite a heavy Ontario membership, but also recognize that we are now really being recognized right across the country, and our projects are being pulled in from all over the place. I wanted to touch very quickly, and I'll be very quick, on 2 projects of the 60. I mean, one is EXERGY Solutions, just to sort of show the projects outside of Ontario. This one is in Alberta with EXERGY and Suncor and Precision ADM in Manitoba. And the consortium is developing through additive layer manufacturing solutions to reduce the environmental impact of the oil sands. The project will develop new oil sands and mineral processing technologies aimed at reducing energy intensity and enhancing reliability, as well as clean tech to dramatically reduce water usage and the potential to eliminate tailings ponds. Now, I can tell you, when this project summary came in, and the potential to eliminate tailing ponds from a what was a less than $5 million project was phenomenal. And it was great to see the collaboration between SMEs and Suncor Energy. So that's one project, and that's looking at how does advanced manufacturing sort of have an impact in the oil and gas sector. The other project I just want to touch on, that is, again, it's a large company with some SMEs, and that's about digitizing hot needle steel production with Dofasco. And it also has quite a strong collaboration with McMaster, Mohawk, University of Toronto, University of Windsor, Western, NRC, NRCan, Holtec Regional Innovation Centre, MyTax, and the collaboration they pull together, both from an industrial perspective, but also right across the board, in order to really impact Canada's advanced manufacturing ecosystem, was really, really impressive. Okay, I'm going to head into the funding streams now. There's basically 5 different types of pots of money. I mean, at the end of the day, we fund between $50,000 and 20 million. But we have different rules for the different sizes of projects. The first one, and the smallest end of our funding, is, and the next 3 are all dedicated towards SMEs, is about feasibility studies. So this is trying to solve an economic or a technical challenge. So something that needs to be proven out, primarily paper study. We're looking at a partnership of 2 SMEs working together. It's 50% funded, and it can be between total project size of $50,000 to $200,000. So $200,000 still, a very reasonable amount of money for a technical or economic feasibility. But what we're looking at here is for some of those earlier stage, potentially disruptive advanced manufacturing capabilities or business ideas or technologies to be proven out, and for the feasibility to enable a larger application, so that it's 50% funded in order to try and accelerate you towards that next step, the next project, some of these bigger funding opportunities. For all these SME-based projects, there's a word limit of 400 words. That kind of sets the level of detail that we're expecting within a project. It's a page and a half. So you're looking at maybe 10-page application to get a couple $100,000, which isn't bad. And I say, that these feasibility studies are a real opportunity to pull out some of those sort of more disruptive, maybe slightly longer term opportunities. The next one I wanted to mention was cluster building. This is looking at either geographical or technology clusters and pulling multiple organizations together to try and address a shared challenge or unlock a shared opportunity. As with all these projects, they're 50% funded. The total project size is 150,000, and again, it's 400 words per question. And as I say, there's 10 questions. We'll go through the 10 questions later. And the last of the SME dedicated funding opportunities is pilot projects. And again, it's 2 SMEs working together or more. I mean, 2 SMEs working together and academic institutes and NRC and lots of other collaborations as appropriate. Again, 50% funded, and this is 100,000 to 500,000. This is not targeted at paper studies. This is targeted at developing something in the real world in an applied situation where potentially it's the first application, or it needs to be maybe it's a new sensor technology or new vision system that hasn't been applied in industry that needs to be proven out, and it's being piloted in order to demonstrate that it has the capability to be rolled out into a full industrial sort of production environment. The next funding stream is for our kind of, I guess, what we call major projects or our main supercluster projects. For these, we're funded at 44.4%. An economist and an accountant got in a room and they came up with that fantastic round number. There was a little bit of math behind it, but it's 44.4%. And we're looking at total project sizes of $500,000 to $8 million. So quite a range. Those of you that know us have known that we have typically said $1 million to $5 million. What we're recognizing certainly as the budget's getting smaller, that there are actually large companies that want to have those smaller projects in the $500,000, $750,000 kind of range, where they want to work with an SME and prove something out. And they don't want to be in it for $1 million or $2 million or $3 million. So that's a change. And the 5 million has been extended to 8 million. That was done actually about 9 months ago, in order to have sort of a bigger window for this 2-partner type collaboration. We recognize true collaboration is difficult. So although we're really keen for as many companies to work together as possible, the minimum sort of viable product is you have to have 2 organizations collaborating together. One of those has to be an SME. Again, the program itself was set up to be advantageous for both M&Es, but also to make sure SMEs have a real chance to play in this space. And then scaling up, our major projects would be from 8 million to 20 million. So this is at least 3 organizations partnering together. Again, around advanced manufacturing technologies, 1 SME funded at 44.4%. It's a 2-stage process. So 400 words for the SME-led small projects, 900 words for up to an $8 million project. So 15 pages. It's not a huge amount for an $8 million project. And then in this case, it's a 2-stage. So you do a single stage at 8 million, or anything over 8 million. You do the first stage, which is the 900 words. That is independently assessed. You get feedback, and then you write sort of a bigger proposal with a cap of 2,500 words. These are maximums. It's not like you have to write a 50-page proposal, or well, that would be like 30, 40-page proposal. It's sort of an indication of the level of detail rather than it being, set in stone. If you write 1,800 words and you get your message across, then that's brilliant, right? So those are our funding streams. And how are we doing in time? Okay. So are you in scope for NGen funding? And basically there's two main things here. One is it's all about advanced manufacturing. The advanced manufacturing supercluster and everything we do needs to be dedicated towards that. And also we have kind of four main scope criteria, kind of pillars of NGen. So from an advanced manufacturing perspective, it could be, simulation and high fidelity modeling and some sort of advanced vision systems, or really new close proximity working with machines, or elements of blockchain or machine learning or AI being developed and all that great stuff. Or it could be a completely new groundbreaking process. Some of our projects are developing new processes, particularly in the life sciences world, where it's just never been done before. It's just groundbreaking. And it uses some of those digital technologies and brings it to that next level. So basically what I'm saying, it's about advanced manufacturing and it's about the cutting edge. Of our four pillars, there's no one that's sort of more important than the other. They all have to be met. And if you don't meet them, then the project is seen as, no matter how good the project is, how good the technology is, how good the idea is, if it doesn't meet the four pillars, it's seen as out of scope and it can't be funded. The first criteria is about transformative nature. So we're looking for projects that are involving the development of advanced manufacturing capabilities. And the important bit is with the potential to confer significant global competitive advantage to Canada. And that is sort of the crux of what we're trying to do. It's again about advanced manufacturing, and it really needs to be that globally competitive leapfrog type scenario. And that can be both kind of transformative, just globally, just wow, like out of this scale, but also it can be looked at in the context of your sector. Not in the context of this is transformative for your company, but is this transformative within your sector, within Canada? And we'll get into that a little bit more later on, of what that sort of means, but that's kind of where that pillar comes from. The second, and it's really fundamental to the structure of the federal government program sort of criteria, was that there has to be genuinely true, meaningful collaboration. This is written into our contribution agreement from the federal government, that there has to be real demonstrated, I think the words are exactly meaningful collaboration. And that's about organizations working together, sharing in the risk of working together, but also sharing in that reward. And through that journey, building trust and building relationships and creating something that's greater than the sum of the individual companies working in isolation or in a customer supplier type relationship. And as I say, we really encourage, you have to have one SME, but we really encourage the inclusion of other organizations as well. The third one is enduring. And again, this is quite, it's really fundamental, and it's really important for Canada that this program is taxpayers' money, and it has to leave some sort of legacy, and it needs to leave a legacy for advanced manufacturing in Canada. And what we're looking for is that legacy is left beyond the project itself. That there's something that is, yes, we want the partners to benefit and create lots of commercial opportunities and have a real kind of benefit to them, but we want to see how that can translate for the greater good of Canadian manufacturing. And this one is, you could think of it like a wedge, and the amount of money that is maybe put towards a project. If it's a $500,000 project or $50,000, you're at the thin end of the wedge. The impact that you'll have on the Canadian landscape will be sort of commensurate with that amount of money. If you're looking at a $20 million project or more, then we're expecting that enduring piece, that impact the Canadian manufacturing is kind of much more strongly felt, and the legacy's left. And then the last one's all about applied. And this is basically, we're not about funding blue sky research. We're not funding the early development of technologies in labs. We're about making sure that we are looking at what the commercial end game is, and then it's being applied towards a real industrial environment, and that it will have the impact of jobs. And I mentioned, the targets that we've got with regards to economic revenue generation and jobs. So we want to see that is impacted. So those are our 4 pillars. With regards to the project requirements, and I'll skip through these pretty quickly. It's all about advanced manufacturing. So you need to demonstrate the technology or application of advanced manufacturing. It needs to go by those 4 pillars that I mentioned: collaborative, transformative, enduring, and applied. We need to see that meaningful collaboration, and there's lots of ways you can demonstrate that through the application, and we'll touch on those as we go. And projects need to deliver those significant commercial benefits and jobs. To go back to the program targets that we have, we have not set projects, you must have a 27-to-1 return on investment. We have taken that as a program level, but we need to aggregate up every project as a portfolio to try and achieve that end goal. I've mentioned the funding ranges that we are funding within, and then a couple of rules, and they're a little bit financy, but I thought I'd throw them in here, that capital expenditures over $1 million, we need to go to ISED, federal government, and get pre-approval. They have approved these in the past. It's just all about making sure that we have a very, very strong case. We're not a capital investment program. So we need to have a very, very strong case when we go to ISED for any approval there. And in order to ensure there is meaningful collaboration, we have a rule around no single partner can receive more than 70% of the reimbursed funds. So that's to ensure that there's at least a 70-30 split. I know some projects hit it right on the money at 70-30, and that's fine, that's within the rules. But we're trying to make sure there's at least a 70-30 split. And that's, if you're 2 partners at 70-30, it can be 70, 20, 5%. The makeup of the rest of the consortium doesn't matter, as long as one partner isn't getting more than 70%. And another rule that was passed down to us within the program is that you cannot be a subcontractor or a consultant and be a formal project partner. Either you're a partner or you're a subcontractor. Trying to mix the two creates some real complexities with the audit trail within the federal funds. So that's something we've not been able to navigate around at this time. So it's worth bearing in mind at this early stage. And then projects out of scope. So we're not here to develop products unless that product is a new advanced manufacturing capability. So if it's a new piece of automation that's revolutionary, then that's a product and we'll fund that. But if it's a new smartwatch that doesn't impact advanced manufacturing, then that's a product we don't fund it. If it's a smartwatch and we're looking at the manufacturing scale up and feasibility and scale up of that using advanced manufacturing technologies and digitization and robotics and lights out facilities, then absolutely that's in our wheelhouse. We don't fund that product development itself. We cannot, and this is World Trade Organization rules, you cannot subsidize full-scale production. We cannot have benefits accruing to one firm. And again, this goes back to the collaboration piece in our contribution agreement. We can't be seen as doing anything anti-competitive, again, WTO rules. And then, can't do routines. It has to be dedicated towards the project and specific towards the project and not just about routine or periodic changes. Okay, I rattled through that quite quickly. If you're still unsure, we're all here to answer questions. So project@ngen.ca, email us and we will do our very best to answer all of your questions. And we'll get on the phone or we'll answer by email or whatever. But yes, if you do have any questions, then please email us. If you do have any questions throughout this presentation, we do have Q&A sessions within the agenda. So shoot your questions into the Q&A and then we'll capture them and we'll answer them in blocks, because I'm sure there'll be similar questions and we might touch on them later on. So we'll try and capture them, and then anything we haven't touched on in the presentation, then we'll answer in those Q&A sessions. Okay, next step is how to prepare a full application. And I'm just going to pause my video for a little bit because I'm going to get into some quite heavy text slides and get into the real nuts and bolts of this. So bear with me a second. Okay. So how to prepare a strong application? Well, the first thing I must mention, we have, something's not changing. Aha, there we go. We have, or we are in the process of rewriting our project guide. So this is where I'm going to go into the absolute nuts and bolts of the application process, how to write an application, the questions that we ask, and really get into it. So we have rewritten the project guide. Currently, version 1 is online at the minute. Version 2 is coming. What I'm going to present to you today is version 2. And in version 2, there is more information in the guidance. So that begs the question, are you looking from us to provide you more detail within the application? And we're not. The guides fundamentally have the same questions in them. And I'll show you the exact differences and walk through it. What we have learned from the 60 successful projects and from the projects that have been unsuccessful, that there's different ways to answer these questions. And where we've seen interesting responses, where we thought, oh, that's a really good benefit, or that's a really interesting way to look at that economic case. We've tried to include it in this new guide to give everyone that just little next leg up in order to really understand what the assessors are looking for, and what the assessors in the past have sort of seen, and the sort of feedback we get from them about, that really helped because I got to understand that a bit better. And so you're going to ask the next question. It's like, oh goodness, I'm in a panic now. I've half written my application. What do I do? They're going to change all the questions on me. Well, we're not, and I'll explain them. But if you're already in Hockey Stick or Portal and you've already passed screening, then you can continue with the 10 questions that you've got that are on there. By all means, use the new guide and lift ideas from it. That's totally acceptable. If you're before screening, then we do expect you to use version 2. But if you've been working away offline and you've half drafted it up and we don't know about it, then get in contact with your NGen contact and we'll chat about it. We're not going to hold anybody to one guide or the other, try and disadvantage. The guide is there to guide and to help you be successful. I would ask that if you've been working offline, that you register your project on the portal ASAP. We like to screen and make sure that we've formally accepted the project is in scope and have started all our internal processes around financial due diligence and things of that nature. So what's changed, or rather what's not changed? So first of all, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, you've got version 1. On the right-hand side, you've got version 2. So what have we changed? We changed the word exploited to the word commercialized. Exploited wasn't ticking the mark. Really what we meant was, how are you going to commercialize the results of your project? Exploited, I think, was being seen as kind of a negative thing. So the content hasn't really changed, but we changed the word. And then the other question we've added a little bit of context to is, when we previously looked at the project team, what the assessors were looking for there was kind of, what's the collaborative nature of the project? It comes through in different parts of the application. It's important that the partners are talked about throughout the application. But really, in this question, it was important to just explicitly state what is that collaborative nature and give projects and companies the opportunity to really articulate it, because it's not explicit throughout the other questions, and it is a core NGen pillar. So in order to make sure that you succeed, we wanted to add that in as the question. The bit that we have changed is we've taken the monster question, which was the old question 6, which asks for lots of stuff. What is the broader ecosystem? So this is again back to the enduring legacy piece, one of the NGen core criteria. And that's really, really important because it has to come across, otherwise the project's out of scope. And what we saw in this question was it was massively diluted by all the other potential benefits. And projects were not focusing on what is the advanced manufacturing ecosystem benefit. So we've split that question up, and there's now just a dedicated question towards that core pillar, which is about the advanced manufacturing ecosystem and leaving a legacy. And we've created the question that stands alone. We've then taken the social and environmental benefits, and we've added them into the question, which was, how does NGen add value to your project? Historically, companies have struggled to answer this because we say, is your project going to be faster? Is it going to be more collaborative? Are you going to do it differently? And the answer is kind of like, we're going to do this differently. We're going to do it faster. We're going to do, so it's a binary kind of answer in an applicant's head that is completely acceptable because I've answered the question. I've told you what we're going to do, which is basically what you said in the guidance. From an assessor's perspective, they find it really hard to differentiate the projects because it's so black and white and binary. So in order to help companies better articulate the wider case, we wanted to take, the 4 or 5 bullets that are about, how does it add value? Why do you need the money? And add that into why we need the money because we're going to do it differently. And there's all these additional benefits. So it really will help sort of enhance that question to allow you as applicants to get more marks. So those are the changes. We've basically split the monster question and put the big bit as a standalone and taken the other 2 bits and put them into the old question now. And I'll go through them in detail. So how are we doing with time, right? So tips and general principles. Well, I want to spend a few minutes just on some recommendations that we've learned ourselves over the last sort of 18 months, and just sound bites of what assessors say to us as well. So the guide is there to help support the development of the proposal. This is a new guide, and it does have those enhancements and suggestions from previously answered questions, from things that we've seen that have been kind of new and not previously in the guide, so we've added those. So try and follow those. You don't have to apply all the suggestions for each question. And again, this goes back to whether you're a feasibility study or a pilot project or a main project. These are suggestions. They may not be applicable. So apply the guidance where it's appropriate. We are looking for you to answer the questions and provide as much detail to create as robust a case as possible. But you don't have to have everything in your application. Consider the amount of funding being requested again, particularly in leaving a legacy. If you're answering the question on leaving a legacy in advanced manufacturing and you're asking for a large amount of money, then think about that in the context of the economic returns and the impact you can have to Canada. If you think that if we put, $8 million into, $20 million project, 8.8 million of NGen funding, that sort of has to have that impact of, to 10 million or $4 or $5 million projects. And every project is unique. And what we've seen is that the projects that have really differentiated themselves have provided the pertinent information that's relevant to them. Yes, you have to answer the guidance, but we cannot foresee the multiple technologies, sectors, challenges. It can't be foreseen. If you think about 18 sectors that cut across manufacturing, it's important that we have all the information, even if we haven't foreseen it within our guides. Answer the questions. This is not an exam. The assessors, however, are only able to assess what is written in the application. So to the best of your ability, try to address the relevant guidance provided for each question. Do not answer the questions in isolation. Do work with your partners to understand the benefits that might accrue from the project. Again, the projects that do really well are the ones that can really articulate the benefits right across all partners. And think about the timescales. So we've got this big ask, this big challenge by 2030. So when you do your analysis, think about it in the short, medium, and long term. Think about that 10-year impact and articulate that through the project. The recurring theme of plan it with your partners. Think about the business case, think about the project plan, think about the financials. They all need to hang together across the consortium. We recommend that you and your partners brainstorm the opportunities together. You might think of things in isolation, but you also might spark new ideas off each other and find new ways to commercialize together, but also maybe you're finding new ways to commercialize things as an individual. Please quantify your statements. Please do not quote from Wikipedia. If you're quoting from Wikipedia or you're reading from Wikipedia, go find the original source and make sure it's a credible one, and quote the original sources. Try and use any market analysis or survey information that you have in order to provide justifications for the statements that you're making. Do not provide links. Do not say, well, it's answered in this report, and expect an assessor to go read a 200-page report because you put a link in. Just copy the relevant and pertinent information out from that report and reference the report. Succinct answers. We do have a word count limit. So it's important that the questions are answered. The assessors are looking for a clear, straightforward case. They're not looking for advanced manufacturing is, and then a whole big blurb of what advanced manufacturing is. They're looking for what is specific about and relevant to your project. Use charts, use graphs, use tables. They're really good for market projections. The economic case, do a table. Just do a table for each partner, direct jobs, indirect jobs. It's easy, it's clean, it's clear. When it comes to the project question around, do you have the right partner mix? How are you going to manage the project? A high-level chart on project governance is useful. Avoid quoting the guidance back to the assessors and making generally unquantified statements that A, doesn't get you any marks, and B, kind of, it's frustrating to read when you're just being read back what's written in the guidance. So I'm going to go to the 10 questions, but I don't have the agenda up, so I'm just going to go and see how we're doing for time, because I'm very conscious that I've got a lot to get through. Okay. 15 minutes and 10 questions. That is going to be a challenge. So when we ask you for the feedback at the end of the session, you'll have to let us know whether you want us to spend more time on one thing or another. Okay, so I'm going to go through this. Hopefully the guide itself and the way these new questions and guidance is written will be of benefit to you. So at a high level, question 1 is a little bit like your executive summary of a business case. It sets the rest of the proposal up. It sets the tone of the proposal. The assessors should be able to read this and go, aha, I've got it. I'm excited. This could be really good. I'm looking forward to reading this. It should be a clear, high-level picture of what the project is. And it's your opportunity to get across your vision and your motivation, and for you to introduce the partners and to introduce the challenges and the opportunities within the project itself. And remember, it's in the context of advanced manufacturing as well. So it's your high-level summary pitch to get the assessors excited, and also maybe where there's things that haven't been specifically pulled out in the other questions. This is your chance to drop it into question 1 to really sell that vision and get a bit of excitement behind the project that you're all, 100% of projects are excited about what they're trying to achieve. When it comes to project management and risk management, split this up into 2 main areas. So first is the first question is really to provide and describe your how you're going to execute on this project. To describe your project management and risk management approach. Do you have specific project management tool sets? Do you have a process that you follow with gateways, etc.? Just to describe that methodology. Do you have any quality management systems in place? Are you using specific ISO qualifications for risk management? It's your opportunity to sort of set the context of the project management methodology and philosophy. We also want to see how you're measuring success. So what's your KPIs? What does success look like within this project for you? And that's all written into the actual question itself. And again, summarize the overall project plan, including the work packages, and describe any key milestones and deliverables. And that can all be written up within the kind of, by 400 words or whatever in the question. We then ask for a project plan itself. And very specifically, we're now asking for a Gantt chart, because when we said project plan in the past, it wasn't explicit that we're looking for a Gantt chart with work packages and tasks and timelines and milestones and deliverables and etc. So visual, this is just a mock-up, just Microsoft project and whacked in a bunch of lines. But basically, Gantt chart could be an MS project. It has work packages, it has tasks, at times, it's got predecessors, and you can assign resources. And this is all part of Appendix 1. And Appendix 1, there's no word count in Appendix 1. So this is where you can provide as much detail as you want. And it could be an MS project. From another project, a project that didn't use MS project, used Microsoft Excel. I had to delete an awful lot of stuff. But basically they did work groups, and within the work groups, there's a couple of work packages. Within the work packages, there's a number of tasks. They laid it out in Excel with a color code. Just so the flip side of that chart was they had their color code, they had their legend. They put their milestones, the dates, and the descriptions into the overall project plan as well. They saved in word count in the question by describing what those work groups were and what those work packages were, and they also did a costed breakdown, which is what we asked for in question 10, and they described the partners' activities. So that answered 2.5 questions in an Excel spreadsheet, and was really useful because it all hung together with regards to the plan and the finances and all the partners and the resources where the partners are working on. So whatever tool you use, it doesn't matter whatever you've got. As two sort of mocked up examples, it could be an MS project thing, it could be an Excel spreadsheet, it could be, an open source tool. The second part is risk management. We're looking for a risk register, and I'll show you an example. And what we're looking for is the consideration of at least the technical, commercial, managerial, and financial risks. There are a lot more risks, and we've put those into the new guide that you could consider. I mean, there could be environmental risks, there could be IP risks, there could be political risks. There could be a change of government, and the new government doesn't like innovation and pulls all of the supercluster funding. And therefore your project could be under risk. Don't think that's going to happen, but those are all risks to consider. When I spoke to people about a risk register, I was asked what is a risk register, which I was a little bit surprised at. And so here's some examples. This one is got a smattering of different risks. I haven't filled them in. It uses a likelihood and impact that's a linear and non-linear scale in order to create a total score. And then you can set your boundaries about what risk tolerance you have. And then we're looking for appropriate strategies to manage that risk. So are you mitigating it? Are you just going to avoid it? Are you going to accept that risk that's so low? And we like to see what those risk strategies are. Another example is this company didn't do numbers. They just went, this one's high, this one's medium, this one's low. And then, 2 highs made a high and 2 mediums made a medium. And that's perfectly fine as well. We're looking for a reasonable spread of risks. there's no magic number, but it depends on the size and complexity of your project. What we're looking for is that there's no elephants in the room. You haven't missed any big, massive risks, which would show that you haven't quite thought through the project, and that you're able to mitigate. The most impressive one we've seen, not just did the risk and the mitigation strategy and defined the strategy, but then did residual risk. And then if the residual risk was still high, then there was a contingency plan put in place. What's really nice to read is when the risks are kind of easy to understand what the risk event is. So it's clearly written in a way that there's some uncertainty, there's a cause, and there's an effect to that uncertainty, because that really explains the context of the risk in the plan. One line, a couple of words doesn't really explain sometimes. Looking at that risk register sort of cold what it's about. Skipping through these a little bit quicker, or we might have to run into the Q&A a little bit and squeeze the break. One of NGen's pillars, one of our core criteria, what is transformative in terms of advanced manufacturing in this project? What is the current state of the art? So how do you benchmark yourself against the current state of the art? It was analysis linked by Statistics Canada showed that 93% of Canadian manufacturers did not regularly benchmark themselves against their competitors. So only 7% of Canadian manufacturers regularly benchmark themselves. And we looked at tech companies, it was only 5% of tech companies regularly benchmark themselves against their competitors. So that's really scary. And what we want is to know that you have benchmarked yourselves and you are looking at the current state of the art for your sector, and that you're part of that 7% of the Canadian manufacturers and tech companies that have really done your due diligence on what's transformative from a sector and global perspective. We're looking for also if there's both technically, but also what's commercially transformative. It's an and/or. Quite often there is commercial transformation when you do apply advanced manufacturing technologies, and it is important to think about those business practices and for you to provide evidence. Again, evidence is really important throughout this process. And it is about, and this goes back to the language you used in the main pillar, it's about leapfrogging global competitors and for our Canadian manufacturers to become global leaders and also be recognized globally as conferring or strengthening Canadian leadership in advanced manufacturing. And then if it's appropriate, and maybe there's some sort of high novel research in here, it's just to highlight and explain the timeliness of the novelty. And are the technologies new, or are you looking at applying existing technologies to new sectors? So is this a new advanced manufacturing capability that multiple partners are coming together to solve a manufacturing challenge, or is it the adoption of existing technologies in a new way to a new sector? And that's the opportunity to sort of describe that. Question 4 really boils down to what your project's about and how you answer this. The things to consider are pretty much the same, but if you're developing a new advanced manufacturing technology, you'll answer this question in the light of, I've developed this new advanced manufacturing technology. This is the market that I want to sell it in. Here's the competition. Here's the barriers to entry. If you're describing, if you're developing a new capability in your manufacturing facility in order for you to be more competitive in your existing market, then we want to understand what is the competitive nature, what are the market dynamics of that market? Why is this important to you? Why do you need to be competitive? You know, you're in automotive, you're in the supply chain, and the margins are, 4% ATROS or 12% IRR or whatever. Like this is such a competitive market that we need to continue to look at the next generation in order to be competitive. And also, if you are doing that, then your partners could potentially commercialize that technology has been created in adjacent markets. So touch on those adjacent markets and how or where your partners could commercialize. And that's basically the crux of question 4. Question 5 is, so question 4 is really the start of your business case. And question 5 is, it's all about the economic impact. So back to the NGen job creation and our KPIs about revenue and job creation. What we're looking here is for all the project partners and potentially the suppliers. So if you've got subcontractors or suppliers or in your project, they will commercially benefit out of this. And you would think by the relationship and the fact of the novelty of it, that there's future business out of this. We really want to see what those potential additional revenue benefits are. Short, medium, and long term, we're looking at 10 years for our projections. We're looking at the additional revenue for all the partners. We're looking at direct jobs created or safeguarded. And we're looking at indirect jobs. I mean, there's been, even if you don't have the analysis yourself with regards to the impact of direct jobs on the supply chain, there's quite a lot of sort of studies out there that are quite credible that show that in many sectors, and every sector is different, but in many sectors, for every 1 direct job, there's 4.2 indirect jobs created in the supply chain. So that multiplier effect of indirect jobs in distribution, transportation, the downstream supply chain of from minerals to materials to that all has a big impact, and we want to see and hear about that. And quite often we just say, look, drop in a table, look at your direct jobs, do a reasonable analysis, articulate justification for those direct jobs, and apply appropriate multiplication factor for your sector. There are other indirect economic benefits that you could articulate as well. And again, these are tips kind of from other projects that have gone, oh, what we saw was that we've reduced our manufacturing footprint. And so we're able to create 1,000 units in the footprint of 500. And actually what that's done is we've been able to bring in new business, which has had the economic return of X or whatever. Or they've given us environmental benefits about better energy usage and reduced scrap and reduced, wastage, and there's an economic value to that. So they've enhanced their business case by dropping in other examples. So again, we wanted to give those examples to you. Maybe you can go, oh yeah, actually we do all of those. And maybe there's additional ones that you can think of. And again, this is for each partner, and we'd like to see over what time scale those benefits will be achieved. Also think about how does it impact within the supply network upstream and downstream. Will this create a localized supply of material? Will this strengthen the supply chain within Canada? And are there other spin-off business opportunities linked to the project? Again, it doesn't have to be all of this. It's just that if there is, it's a differentiating factor for you when you're articulating your project. Question 6, as I said, this is slightly different now in that it's been focused just on the advanced manufacturing ecosystem because it is such a strong pillar for NGen, and it has been diluted by the noise of the other benefits, some might say. And so it needs to be answered just simply to be in scope for funding, but also it's so important with regards to the amount of money that you're requesting and that wedge piece of the legacy that it's a standalone question now. And what we're looking at is that legacy. So what is the significant and lasting impact to advanced manufacturing? There could be lots of impacts to different ecosystems, and by all means explain those impacts here, but we're looking at the manufacturing ecosystem and that impact. Describe how the project will create widespread positive impact, leaving that legacy. And the important bit here is do it for your partners, but the legacy piece is when you look beyond your project partners. When you look beyond the consortium itself, what legacy and impact is leaving. And we've got some examples. The content for the ecosystem piece is all still the same. We've just added in a few additional thoughts of what other projects have said that they're doing. It could be workforce development in terms of engagement of women and underrepresented groups. It could be about attracting and training highly skilled talent pools on their workforce development. Again, it doesn't have to do all of these, but these are the suggestions that we're making that could be seen as ecosystem development. There could be increases in industry knowledge. There could be tours or use cases and best practice. There could be new intellectual property that's shared with others, or it could influence the activities of colleges or universities. It could influence the curriculum, for example. There could be infrastructure support. So will the project help to develop or support new tools, test beds, or data platforms? Or it could be around collaborative networks and new organizations and industry partners and post-secondary educations and research centers all working together to strengthen advanced manufacturing. And also it could be about building greater capacity for small medium enterprises. Or you could tell us, and you could keep educating us about other advanced manufacturing ecosystem benefits that you can think of within your projects. Those are the ones that we've thought of, but by all means, it's your project, and how you influence and impact and leave a legacy is up to you to describe. Those are our suggestions. Question 7. So this is the split of question 6, and so it's how does NGen add value? This is a fundamental question. It's a federal, we're not for profit, but it's federal funding. It's taxpayers' money. We need to justify that you need the money and why you need the money and why you need the money outside of normal market forces. So does this money change the scope, either technically or commercially? Are you doing this bigger, badder, bolder? Are you doing it faster? Are you doing it at a much larger scale? Are you doing it much more collaboratively? We really want to understand that case. We want to understand the specifics for your project and why that money is important. And then to augment that and to help out, we also want to understand any social benefits. So what are the social benefits in the project? And what are the environmental benefits? Previously, we literally just said, what are the environmental benefits? Well, what we saw within projects is that nearly every single advanced manufacturing project has an environmental benefit. It could be around emissions. It could be around better energy management. It could be around user creation of sustainable materials, or the consideration of the whole life cycle benefits, reduced water usage. I spoke to a company the other day, benchmarked globally, compared to their process and the next best process in another country. It used a third less water and had half the CO2 footprint. These are amazing differentiating factors for Canadian manufacturing, and we want to really understand them and know about them. That this will strengthen the supply chains in so many sectors and make Canada globally competitive because of some of the benefits that we have with regards to Canada's environmental footprint. And then there may be other benefits. There might be regulatory benefits or policy benefits. If there are others, please articulate them here. Again, that's all differentiating factors. You should consider in question 8, which is you've changed the word exploit to commercialize. Think about the new potential business opportunities, both within the collaboration. So how are you going to get business opportunities together, but also individually? Maybe your partners just created this new vision system that solves your problem, but they can commercialize it in 5 other adjacent markets that aren't competing against you. Or you say, you know what, you have to use it with us for 3 years, and then you can go to our competitors or whatever you decide, but articulate what those commercial opportunities are. Think about those other sectors, adjacent sectors. For each partner, describe the activities that will be undertaken to ensure the sustainability and continued growth of the project. And think about that in terms of the project itself and then after the project end date. And we've got a whole list of things that you should consider and include. In the interest of time, I'm not going to just read them out, but think about your route to market and other market opportunities. Think about your intellectual property. This is the question that sort of is the focal point for all your intellectual property strategy information. And I'll touch on that in the slide in a bit. As I say, we've got a workshop on the 17th of November to really deep dive everything IP. The last two questions. And again, this is the question wording slightly changed, but the intent hasn't. This is the question where we really want to see that the project's collaborative, that the pillar, the collaboration is truly there, and that relationships are being developed, knowledge is being shared, and trust is being built. And again, your IP strategy is quite telling. And so we would look at your IP strategy to see what knowledge is being exchanged or not, and that would be telling in terms of the collaboration. So instead of us just doing it and looking at it, or rather the assessors doing it, and that's what the assessors did, we're going to say it here is like, think about what you're doing with regards to intellectual property and how that can impact your collaboration. And then sort of the sort of main original part of that question is, what's the track record? Do you have the right skills mix? Do you have the right governance structures? Do you have the right access to facilities and resources to execute on the project? High level summaries of track record, and it doesn't have to be names of individuals. It can be, roles and track records of companies, or maybe maybe there's a very specific individual or individuals you want to call out, but it's what is that track record, and what's the confidence that you're going to be able to execute on such an audacious project. And the last question's finance, and we've enhanced the wording here as well. A lot of people kind of thought, well, giving you a finance document, that's the answer to the question, and it's really not. Indicate all your costs, and that is in the financial workbooks. By all means, the assessors get the financial workbooks, and sometimes that's the first thing they look at. And this is your opportunity to explain specific elements in there that maybe are not completely visible and understood, like what labor, what subcontract, why is it a subcontractor if it's such an important piece instead of a partner? Well, maybe the business case didn't add up because not all costs like overheads are covered. This is your opportunity to really explain that, and explain what equipment, what materials are being used and why. You can put your work package breakdown here that's costed, or you can, as I say, put it into the project plan, Appendix 1, and have it all costed there. But the assessors will be looking at, are the costs broken down? Is the budget realistic? Do you need other funding sources? Has that been demonstrated? And do the work packages actually hang together with the project plan and the costs? And it's also your opportunity to sort of give an early justification of why you need capital equipment that's over $1 million. The other aspect to this is projects quite often leverage other funding, private sector funding, and we've seen this quite a bit. Whenever an organization gets an NGen grant, particularly if it's multi-million, they're able to almost bring that to the bank, show that they've gone through a robust due diligence, show that they've been funded, and there may be opportunities for you to leverage other private sector investment and financial commitments. There may be other funding, government funding, which is completely fine. We can stack funding up to 100%, but we need to understand what those funding sources are, and where you are in the process of getting those funds. Another thing is to describe how the project can help attract or retain and promote industry investment and product mandates in Canada. And the assessors will be looking at all of that, make sure it all hangs together, and making sure that the overall proposal is value for money. So that's the 10 questions. I'm going to wrap up, but I'm 10 minutes over, so apologies. The Supercluster program at its fundamental DNA, and this was a discussion point right up to 60 minutes before the contracts were signed, was all around intellectual property and the importance of it. You will need an IP strategy. you'll see there that there's on the NGen project guides part of the website, there is an IP strategy and a guide, and there's some template tables that you can fill in. So have a look at those. We typically don't really need the IP strategy until later in the process, till you're very close to submitting. So if you're in the early stages of drafting, don't panic right now. We can say Rhonda, who's online, she can have a meeting with you one-on-one as appropriate. But what our intent is to do a really deep dive on the 17th of November. Go to ngen.ca/events, and the event is there, and you can register today for that. Also, Rhonda's put together, there's a lot of myths about IP in superclusters. It's like, well, you know, I have to give up my IP. Well, absolutely, you don't. And so we've tried to address some of those myths. And if you're really excited and interested about IP, not just about your project, but in a more general sense, last week, Rhonda and Peter from Garlings did a Access the Expert series on intellectual property. And under our archive section of those events, you can go back and sort of listen to a podcast of the event they ran last week. So to wrap it up, try and answer the questions as best you can. It's not an exam, but you know, assessors have to follow the guidance and see that the case has been made and there's no big gaps. Quantify your answers where you can. Try to be really succinct and plan the project with your partners. I find that if there's someone experienced in your team that's got a strong business background, that understands, you know, an economic case and a project plan and a bit of technical background that hasn't been involved in the project, throw them this guidance and throw them your application and ask them to read it with a second pair of eyes, you know, unbiased, and see whether you're ticking all the points and see whether they're convinced. And that can save you a lot of time in preparing the proposals. We can do that as a team of 3. We can do that, but the bandwidth that we have is just not there to do massive robust reviews on all of the projects within our pipeline. So I try and seek that advice, but of course we are still here for you, and we will do our best to give you feedback throughout the process. Okay, let's see what we've got in terms of questions. General, yes, I believe we're recording, and the slide deck will be available. Also, I'll mention that we are going to be running these workshops a lot more regularly, and we are going to refine them and hone them and make them better and more, and maybe we'll split them up in different ways. So we'll take the feedback from you and try to make this better each time. How do SMEs get matched with co-development partners? Couple of ways. The first one is on our website. There's a section called Collaboration Corner, and Collaboration Corner is where companies that want to advertise that they've got a project and they're looking for specific skill sets, then they can put their project up there and say, this is what we're looking for, and you can contact the companies if you've got some of the solutions they're looking for, or if you've got a project idea yourself, then you can go on to Collaboration Corner. We are building a much more robust collaboration tool. We've got a kind of version 1.0 that is simply you can throw up your own information. Version 2.0 is out for RFP, and we're going to develop a much more robust collaboration tool in that respect. Also, let us know what you do, and we will think about you whenever we're going through projects and seeing whether there's opportunities. We do a lot of one-on-one brokering. It's can be tricky because obviously there's commercial confidences, but we've got quite good at managing those commercial confidences and being able to help at least kick the conversation off. Can foreign companies be partners? They can be partners. They cannot receive funding. So all of our money has to go to Canadian companies, as in the company is doing the work in Canada. So if you're setting up the company in Canada and you're going to do the work in Canada, then that's fine. But if you're in Italy or Germany and the technology isn't here, then you cannot be a partner receiving direct funds. You might be able to be a subcontractor to a partner within a project. That does require the federal funding to sign off on that business case, and typically foreign cost justifications have to be really well globally benchmarked to show that Canada just simply doesn't have the capability, and that this capability is inward investment and inward knowledge to Canada. In those cases, then it can happen. Can a not-for-profit also apply for funding? There's two rules around that within our contribution agreement. It's yes, a not-for-profit can apply for funding if A, they have the majority of their funding derived by industry, and B, they, I think the exact words are facilitate R&D. So if you think you're eligible, get in contact with us and we'll have a conversation. And the exact wording is in the finance guide about the eligibility of a not-for-profit company. Nice to see somebody saying nice, great tips, so I appreciate that. Can you discuss NGen's review of the initial application stage 1 compared to the full application? Yes. If it's an over $8 million project, the stage 1 is 10 questions. So you answer the 10 questions, you provide a project plan, you provide a risk register. That is sent out to 5 independent assessors, and I'll touch on this at the end of the presentation. Those 5 assessors independently score the projects, give us a score and say, basically, we recommend for this project to move through to stage 2 or not. And if it's not, you get the feedback and you get to enhance it and refine it, and then you get to come back in again. And then stage 2, we're just looking for a lot more information. So we're looking for a bit more detail in the project plan. What we didn't want to do is have people write like a 50-page business case and then have it rejected. We wanted to have that 2-stage approach where feedback was given, we really made sure it was in scope, and then you have that chance to refine it and polish it for that bigger quantities of money. So stage 2 is the 10 questions, exactly the same 10 questions, but we're looking for more detail, project plan, risk register again, and that's when you submit an IP strategy and your finance workbooks. If you're a single stage project, you put in the 10 questions, the risk register, the project plan, the risk register, the finance workbooks, and the IP strategy all in one go. And as I say, the amount of information needed is less. It's over half that if you're under $8 million. Timeline for application evaluation after submission. It depends. Typically, we do it in 48 hours. Once it's formally submitted and all the documentation is in place, we typically get results out to companies within 48 hours. If it's a particularly big project, especially if it's a second stage, we tend to give the assessors 4 or 5 days, 6 days, just to make sure they really have the time to go through the full submission, and we're not rushing them. If we're doing a challenge where we just did a challenge, we did 240 assessments in 10 days. So the upper end, if you're part of a challenge submission, is that it's a bit longer, but 48 hours is our typical turnaround time these days. Can projects aiming at improving extraction of natural resources be funded? That's a really good question, and it's right on the boundary of what we're set up to do. So if it's the processing of the natural resource from one thing into another, then that would be in scope. If it's the actual extraction itself, it's not in scope, because we've kind of drawn a bit of a boundary diagram about how far can we go into other sectors without sort of going outside our mandate. And the core extraction itself isn't, but the processing of the material from one thing into another is. Maybe we need a more refined conversation on that to understand exactly what you're doing, but that's sort of as black and white as I can make it with that. Can you clarify greenfield versus brownfield project? Is one more desirable over the other? No, I don't think we have any. We don't have any kind of positive or negative bias towards one or the other. We're interested in the total package and the impacts of how advanced manufacturing can be impacted. One could be more advanced technology, and one can be really interesting in how you actually turn, turn the facility around. So we don't, but we'd be interested to understand what your thought process is there, and maybe talk a bit further. Yes, so there's two opportunities. This question is, are you able to include charts, images in the application? Absolutely, yes. They are your friends. Use as many as you can. In the application portal online, it is now rich text format, so you can put them directly into the application. However, that sometimes doesn't always work, depending on what the image is. So we've got an extra appendices, which is called, I guess, Appendix 3, which is maybe used for additional charts or images. So basically, if they're not uploading into the rich text on the hockey stick portal, then you can reference them and put them into a Word document or a PDF. And we very much encourage, the assessors love that, right? If they can look at a market projection on a graph or an image and understand look at a picture of it and see what you're doing, that's great. Okay, thanks, Fred. Yes, my quality of my sound is not great. Apologies for that. I will look at that for the next one. And helpful workshop, thank you. So I appreciate those comments as well. I think what we can do is maybe, well, I'm not speaking next, but I certainly wouldn't mind a drink of water and a 2-minute break. Shall we say we do take a 5-minute break, just to allow people to recharge coffee cups, get a glass of water. So I'm making it at 2:23. So, I mean, 2:28, it's very specific, but I'll kick back off again and introduce Ashley at 2:28, and we'll get into the project funding. And I think we'll squeeze some time out of the application process. So actually, let's make it 2:30. We'll come back at 2:30. We'll do the finances, and we'll squeeze a little bit of time out of the application process. So, and I'll see whether I can get better audio between now and then. Thanks, Fred. Awesome. Okay, I'll see you in 7 minutes. Hello, everybody. I certainly welcome that glass of water. So we have up next Ashley from our finance team, who's going to walk through the project funding and eligibility rules. And then we're in the final stretch. I'll do the first couple of steps of the application process, the kind of buttons you need to push on our portals and etc. Like that. And then we'll wrap up. So I'll hand over to Ashley. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Sorry, thank you, John.
Awesome.
Let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen, everyone?
Yeah, that looks good.
Perfect. Okay, so today I'll be walking you through the general overview of the funding for the projects and eligible costs. And the objective of this presentation is to help you understand and navigate the funding rules, to make it as easy as possible to obtain funding quickly, to make the process as smooth as possible for you, and to protect you and NGen from any future audits and adjustments from the federal government. So just a reminder to everyone that NGen funding is not a granting program. It is funding provided based off of direct, supportable, and eligible project costs, and you will have a project budget that is outlined in the master project agreement, and your costs will need to fit within those defined budgets. So funding may be provided on an advance basis. Timing for advances and advanced claim reconciliation will be stipulated in the master project agreement. And the rules for the funding will be found on our website and are defined by the government's Innovation Supercluster funding rules. And there are project financial guides available on our website as well, and we do highly recommend for you to refer to those when building your financial workbooks for the application. Expenses are only eligible after the project start date. So this is again specified in the MPA, and all claims must be accompanied by supporting documentation, which I will walk you through in the following slides. And claims will be reviewed alongside regular project monitoring of your project and its progress. So in order to validate your claim submissions, you will need to supply some material to us to support the costs. For examples, timesheets reflecting the hours worked for eligible hours claimed, and all copies of invoices over $500. And even if these are not provided to us as support, you will need to keep all supporting documentations for at least 7 years after the completion of the project in the case of an audit, which the Government of Canada reserves the right to do. So this is a visual of the process from start to finish. Once you go through the application agreement and your project is approved, you will receive a funding confirmation letter and a master project agreement. And once that is signed, it will stipulate the dates for your reconciliations and advance payments, as well as the project start dates. If you are receiving advances, we will pay you within 2 days of that letter, and your next payments will be released on a set schedule. This is just to note that no advances will be granted past December 31st of this year. So the project will go back to a reimbursement funding model after that. And claims will be made on a reimbursement basis and will be submitted every 3 months, and the dates will be stipulated on the master project agreement. NGen is under no obligation to pay more than 85% of the funding to recipients until we have received and approved all outstanding claims with supporting information and project reporting. And this is to ensure that we receive all information for a proper project closeout. So what expenses can be claimed? A copy of the project financial guide can be found on our website under projects info and guides. And this is a great document to reference when creating your financial workbooks. Okay. So I'll be going through some of the key points in this guide with you. And if you are receiving any other government funding that is used towards eligible costs of this project, so for example, costs that you'll be claiming for, you will need to be required to disclose this to NGen. Like John said, the stacking limit for the NGen program is 100%, so you can utilize government funding up to 100% on the project. However, if you are receiving funding from another government program and they have a lower stacking limit, let's say 75%, the lower stacking limit applies. And for any who are receiving funding from the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy Program, you will need to consider any potential funding from NGen when you are applying. NGen will not be reconciling these costs for you. It is your obligation to ensure that you are claiming correctly. So what type of costs are eligible for NGen funding as defined by the Innovation Supercluster funding rules? Generally, expenses must be reasonable and directly relate to eligible project activities. In-kind costs are not reimbursable and no overhead costs are allowed. Claims must be done on a cash basis, and this means that only expenses that you have incurred and actually paid may be claimed within the project period. And any expenses submitted must be net of sales tax. Labor costs. So this is salary and wages. Claimed costs must actually reflect the labor you have incurred. So hourly rates you're reporting must tie back to payroll registers. You will not have to supply the payroll register to us, but in case of an audit, this may be checked. And you can claim non-discretionary benefits such as CPP, EI, EHT. However, no health benefits or pension can be claimed. Like John said, project participants cannot subcontract to another party when it comes to labor. Any rules that is subcontract must be reasonable and accounted for at fair market value. And if there is a subcontract related to a project partner, that subcontract must be at cost. Capital and equipment costs. So NGen funds up to 100% of the acquisition of new equipment, but it cannot exceed 30% of the value of the total project cost. Cash payments towards equipment under financing arrangements are eligible to the extent paid during the project term, but this excludes any interest. And any existing equipment that you are using to carry out project activities cannot be claimed. However, you can claim the direct costs incurred to run the equipment. Examples being materials consumed and utility costs if they are metered. And again, if there is any single assets over $1 million, that will require pre-approval from NGen, so please get in touch with us if that is in your projects. Patent costs. So only SMEs may obtain funding for patent costs, and there are limits set up in the finance guide. Foreign costs must be approved in advance. And again, if you foresee any costs that will be incurred within any organizations outside of Canada, please let us know. Our funding is only intended to be supporting Canadian businesses. However, there are exclusions to this rule. Equipment, materials, and supplies purchased outside of Canada, but if they are shipped to Canada, then advance approval is not required. The approval rule really applies around subcontract, labor, consulting, and services. So some of the other key categories of eligible costs are any costs claimed must be incurred as part of your project activities. So we may ask you to demonstrate that as part of your claim. Costs for software licenses that are new and used directly for project activities may be eligible. existing inventory of materials and supplies. So anything you have purchased prior to the official project start date may be eligible, but you would need to have approval in advance. So please be cautious when planning out any procurement activities. And any selling, marketing, or advertising costs, including travel or labor related to them, is not eligible. And all travel costs that you will be claiming will be subject to the National Joint Council Travel Directive. In the project finance guide is a detailed list of ineligible costs that may not be funded. However, the key ones are sales tax are not eligible, any costs not related to project objectives, costs already covered by other government funding sources, infrastructure costs or costs related to construction or building purposes, and any contributed in kind, or if you're donating any items to the project, or if there's no cash payment or any supporting invoices to support the claim. Okay, so I'll briefly touch on the claim reconciliation process. So your schedule will be outlined in the master project agreement. The claims will be submitted via an online portal. Once your project is contracted, the finance team will reach out to the project lead to send out a registration link and user guide to the portal. Okay, and we ask that with every claim for our projects to provide as much information as possible to help us understand the claim and make it as easy of a review as possible. Okay, so these are just screenshots of the portal, but once a project is contracted, finance will reach out to you directly to provide a walkthrough of the entire process. Okay. And with each claim, it must be accompanied by a certification signed by the CFO, VP of Finance, or their delegate. And this person will need to attest to the costs of the claim being directly related to project activities, that only eligible costs have been claimed, and that claims have been incurred and paid in cash. And it will include boxes or fields for you to disclose any other government funding or subsidies you're receiving that directly relate to the project costs. Okay, and if there's any questions regarding eligibility or any finance related questions, please feel free to reach us at projectfinance@ngen.ca. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Ashley. And we've got a little bit of Q&A at the end as well, so we can try and pick up any questions from the finance side of things. Sure. As Ashley says as well, the finance guide's up there, and the finance team are also, just like Rhonda, willing to meet with you ahead of time to walk through any specific questions that you've got when you're preparing the preparing your finance workbooks, etc. Okay, let me just share. Okay, so the application process itself. This is really getting into the kind of the last, I would say, we'll spend maybe 5 minutes on this. So the steps you take in order to get a project through our application process is first you join NGen. So it's ngen.ca/join. You then complete a screening. This is a quick no. It's basically some high level information about the project, and it's to make sure you meet some of the core criteria of the NGen funding. If it does, it gives us the opportunity to open up that dialogue early and to ensure that before you start investing large amounts of time, that we make sure that the project is as close to the scope mandate of NGen as possible. You then develop the application and you submit it. We send it out for independent assessment, and if it's successful, we move into contracting. As per the question earlier, There's sort of an extra loop there. If you're over an $8 million project, it kind of goes submit application, independent assessment, feedback, submit second application, independent assessment, and then contracting. So when you're joining NGen, so ngen.ca/join, you need to join as an organization. If you join as an individual, you can join as an individual and an organization. If you join as an individual, you're not able to apply for, click the button to actually specifically apply for the funding. You can see everything that an organization does, it's just you can't click that button. I'll show you the button. But so when you do join, and membership is free. It's kind of, you just fill in the application, you fill in some details about your company, and you become a member. As I say, we're 2,931 members so far. So when you get into this members page, you click on Supercluster projects up there, and that brings up the Supercluster funding streams. So the funding streams I did at the top of this presentation. You'll note that it says 1 to 5 million. That's changed, and we need to we're moving faster than we're updating our systems at the back end, but we're changing that to 500,000 to 8 million. And you click on project applications. So once you click on that project applications, you are taken out of the NGen branded sort of environment, and Hockey Stick is our partner that manages the portal and manages the sort of the back end steps of the assessment and capturing documents in a secure environment and managing those documents and allowing us to assign assessors to independently review the projects. So you use exactly the same email and password for your membership, but you enter it into this Hockey Stick black and blue kind of environment rather than the orange. So the screening, which it says is quick to know, it's basically your project title. You might not even have one. It might be, code name, 2BC, your primary location, when you roughly expect to start the project, the project size, project cost. That allows us to kind of understand, are you 500,000, are you 20 million, kind of where you are. And then, a public description. This is like, 100 words, 200 words, just something to broadly explain what you're trying to do. We do not release this in the public, by the way. It's not like you answer that and release it in the public. If you're successful, it gives us something to go back to give a quick summary, usually to the federal government. And then we work with you to make sure that whatever we put into the public domain actually is kind of been validated and still relevant because the project could evolve as the time go by. And you click a couple of checkboxes to say, yes, I agree with terms and conditions. And there's just a couple of yes, no questions. And then you enter in your partners if you have partners at that point. You can save this at any time by clicking the Save Draft button. And then so you can populate a little bit of it and then come back to it and populate a bit more and come back to it. But do click Save. When you come back, you've got to click the Edit button. Quite often people go back and the data is frozen in time. You've got to click the Edit button to go back in and start editing the information. To get back in, there's a number of ways you can go back through the steps, or you can just go to the website link and you can just kind of bookmark that as hockeystick.co/applications, and that just gets you straight back into your application. So once you've filled in sort of this information, you've clicked some buttons to say you're willing to sort of accept the terms and conditions. You put in roughly how much money you're looking at. This can always change. It's not set in stone. And we ask that you complete an application agreement, which can be found on our project guides. The application agreement is basically akin to an NDA that allows us to submit your confidential project information to the independent assessors. So it gives us that authority to share that application with the assessors such that it can be assessed. And so if we don't have that signed application agreement, the project can never go out for assessment. Also on this screen, you'll notice that there's the finance workbook upload. You do not need to upload finance workbooks at project screening. It's just there because all the financial information is in one place, but you do not need to have finance workbooks until much later in the process, whenever you're way past screening and you're actually developing the application itself. Once you've completed all that information, as I say, you can press Save Draft at any time, the whole way through, as many times as you want. When you're ready to submit your application for screening, where a member of my team will read through the project and see whether it's in scope, or they'll get back to you and go, I'm not sure about this bit, can we chat about it? Hit Submit Application, and that is submitted for screening. I know it says Submit Application, but it means submitting for screening. It's not actually submitting a funding application. We have had people thinking that by submitting that 200-word summary and some finance information, that's actually applying for NGen funding. It's not. It's for the screening. Once the screening is sort of accepted, the finance team will start doing their financial due diligence checks, and they'll reach out to you if there's any concerns or any additional information that they need from you to pass through that. The financial due diligence is to ensure that you have the right amount of liquidity and funding in order to complete the project. In the project guide, there's sort of a summary of what the finance team look at there. So once it's gone through screening and financial due diligence, just to make sure you can actually execute on the project, you get a whole bunch of extra drop-downs, additional project information, the 10 application questions, and the project documents. You can start to fill in the 10 questions at this point. You can upload your documents. Click Save Draft each time. If you click Submit Application, then you cannot touch it again. It's kind of gone to us. And if it's not ready, then we've got to unlock it and send it back to you, sort of thing. So just hit Save Draft and edit and just keep going in when you need to. Under Project Documents, this is where you upload the project plan that I mentioned, which is part of question 2, the risk register, which is part of question 2, the question appendix. So if for whatever reason the rich text format, although it's been working very well, we've just kind of got a bit of a backup there that if some of the charts or images aren't embedding into the questions, then you have a chance just to upload those into a separate document if it's needed. You get to upload your IP strategy, and then you upload a finance workbook. And the project plan, risk register, IP strategy is for the consortium. The finance workbooks is we need one workbook for each individual partner. And that's we upload those workbooks. And that's the basic steps. Once you've uploaded those workbooks and the questions, you click Submit. Usually we work with you through that process. We make sure that your IP strategy is robust and your finance workbooks will have a pass through our finance team to make sure your costs are eligible. The last thing we want is a whole bunch of ineligible costs that you can't claim, and it's not good for anybody. So we'll work with you through that. You hit Submit and it goes off to our independent assessors. So for those of you who don't know, we have a pool of about 80 independent assessors. They're all got expertise in manufacturing or held senior business roles or have had specific experience in across multiple sectors. That's why we've got such a big pool of assessors. We assign 5 experts to your proposal. It's done anonymously. They don't know who each other are. And they score your application independently. So they read your application and they give each question a score out of 10 marks, and they evaluate it and they submit those scores back into us. We screen the assessors for conflicts of interest. They are under an NDA, and they're not doing this representing any organization. It is not, they do it as an independent, but they also, and they are independent from the process. And as I said, there's typically 5, such that there's no, if if there's only a couple of assessors, one assessor with a positive bias, one assessor with a negative bias could swing the project. The reason why we use 5 is statistically that gives us the opportunity to iron out if one assessor is particularly negative about a project and we don't want it to derail the outcome. The assessors take the assessment and the evaluation in 3 parts. One is the 4 scope pillars that I mentioned: collaborative, transformative, enduring, and applied. They review the proposal and they make a determination, does it meet those 4 pillars? If it's a yes, it goes forward. If it's a no, regardless of how good the project is, then the project is removed from the assessment. The second question they're asked is, would they recommend the project to NGen for funding? So this is not about scope. This is about an overall view. It's pretty rare that an assessor would say no if the project scores well. It's usually a clean, straight assessment, unless there's something very specifically concerning about the project that the assessor feels needs to be brought up. And at that point, we'll have those conversations. And then, as I say, there's the 10 marks for 10 questions. So you get a score out of 100, or we receive scores out of 100. We average those scores together to get a final mark. And then that, along with the feedback from the assessors, forms a recommendation to NGen whether we should fund the project or not. The assessment will only be based on the information in the application itself, and we do not permit links to websites. If there is pertinent information and if you're referencing a specific study, then take the extract of that study and put it into the application itself. We're trying to keep every application transparent and fair for everyone, but everyone has the sort of same amount of space and same opportunity to articulate their project, such that it's a bit of a level playing field. If there's 50 appendices and 20 links, then there's a lot to get through for the assessors, and it doesn't create a fair sort of landscape for the projects. If you're approved, we have a master project agreement. We both sign it and we kick the project off and we go for it. That's it. We can do some more Q&A. I'll just have a quick look and see if we've got too many more questions. And by all means, drop the questions into the chat. I'm not seeing too many more questions. I've got another poll that we would like to do. And this is really to help us scope up our future webinars. What worked well for you today? What could we spend more time on? And also, our next workshop that we're going to run is actually going to be on the November 12th. So 12th of November, we're likely to spend a lot more time on the feasibility studies and pilot projects in that workshop, specifically because the guidance will be reduced a lot. That's pretty heavyweight guidance, those 10 questions for those big projects. We'll be condensing that down and distilling it a bit, such that you could copy and paste one question and be more than 400 words. It's just crazy. So we'll distill that down. That workshop's likely to be more focused on feasibility studies and pilot projects. The 17th of November is our IP workshop, where Rhonda will be able to deep dive what we're looking for there. And depending on the attendance, maybe we'll try and make it maybe a bit more interactive. And yeah, we're seeing I'll share I can share these results now, but at the minute it's looking like you're not looking for too much more time on the hockey stick portal. A little bit more time in intellectual property, and that's great. And we can add some more slides into that. And as I say, we're going to more regularly do these IP workshops. So the front runners are tips on preparing an application. So a little bit more time on that. How to prepare the 10 questions, more time on that. They're the top 2 front runners. And then more time on eligible project costs. They're sort of the 3. Okay. Yeah, I'll admit, you know, I'll hold my hand up. The 10 questions was kind of, there's a huge amount to get through. We did it in about 30 minutes, and I was running 5 minutes sort of behind on the first part. Yeah, and we can certainly spend more time on tips on preparing an application. That's the winner. The majority of you have asked for more time on preparing an application. We can certainly enhance that section. There's a number of other things I know that myself and my team would want to kind of put in there and spend more time on. So we'll put some good thought into that over the next 2 weeks before the next workshop. And okay, we have a couple more questions in here. Does hockey stick use member data for its own purposes, or is it limited to use by NGen? I believe all the terms and conditions that it's just limited to NGen. I have to check that because I couldn't tell you categorically. And so I will check that question. You mentioned that the slides will be available. I was wondering where they will be available. It's a good question. We need to find somewhere on our website that's appropriate. If that's accessible and easy to find. If not, what we'll do, we've got everyone's email address, and we'll certainly email you a PDF of all the slides.
John,
yes?
we could put it on the events page. We'll archive this event. We'll put the recording there and the slides that will be available there.
There you go, Frank. Awesome. We'll do that. And Frank, if you've got an answer to the hockey stick, now Frank's your director of membership. So does hockey stick use member data for its own purposes?
That's a very good question. I like you. I'm unsure.
We'll find out, and we'll answer that question on an FAQ document that we'll also post to the archived event. Can the 10 questions questionnaire be sent as an independent attachment PDF to ensure no issues with charts, formats, etc.? We do try to avoid that. It can. Ultimately, it can. I can go into that question appendix. The reason why we try to avoid it is we want your confidential information on the system and to be read and reviewed by the assessors on the system, rather than them downloading the whole application in one document onto their systems. Now, our independent assessors do have to assure us they've got, you know, IT security and cybersecurity in place, and they do sign the NDA, and they're under all sorts of legal requirements with us. But we try to minimize the amount of documents that could be on anyone's machine or being read at any time. But that said, if you want to do that, that is fine. We haven't had too many issues with charts or formats. That question appendix was originally there because we didn't have rich text format. But what's the point in deleting it, and just in case there is an issue? But if you are having an issue as well, do get in contact with us, because we are working with Hockey Stick in partnership, and we do want to resolve and make the portals as efficient as well, and we want to know if there are any issues. Could you in the future show an example answer to some of the key questions? It's really hard. It's really hard. I've tried this. I've tried to sort of redact an answer and get permission from a company. It tends to then be so generic that you can't really tell what the technology is and then how it all hangs together. But I will think about that, and we'll see. Maybe you can drop into the chat which question would you most want to see an answer to. Maybe you can throw that into the chat for us. And I don't think we can do all 10, but if there's a specific question that you think I really would like to see what the model looks like, then maybe we can try and do something there. Can you explain a bit more about the project nature. You don't want a lab style development. You're looking for a ready to use technology. Is that correct? If so, should the project be a customization nature to fit an existing technology into a new industrial application? If so, do you still need an IP strategy in this case? What we're looking for is technologies that can be applied and that are transformative. If it's just taking existing technology, if you're taking an existing technology that's never been applied in an industrial application, then there would be an IP strategy anyway, because ultimately you're going to be doing something new and therefore there'll be new knowledge. Your IP strategy doesn't necessarily have to be a patent strategy. It can be talking about knowledge created and knowledge shared, and it can include the opportunities of industrial designs or copyright or trade secrets. So yeah, we're not looking for early stage blue sky, TRL 1, 2, kind of 3 stuff. We're looking for TRL 4 type technologies or later stage MRL, manufacturing readiness level opportunities where you're scaling something up in a new environment. I appreciate the information, but basically follows the guide. I would suggest more examples of what can be funded. Okay, yeah, I mean, what we could do is give more examples of the projects that have been funded and sort of spend more time on the types of projects that have been funded in the past. As I say, we could put up an example of a question, but it gets so generic. The key thing here is to think about, do you meet the 4 pillars? Is the project transformative? Does it confer global strength for Canada? Is it collaborative? Will there be more than one organization working together in a truly collaborative, meaningful way? Will it leave a legacy, and what will that legacy be, and is it applied, which is the previous question. If you do want to have a conversation with us, do get in touch, project@ngen.ca, or email me and we'll connect you up with a meeting and we can talk about it. We can talk about what the opportunities are. Got a finance question, Ashley. Is pilot scale machinery considered to be capital expenditure or a consumable cost for the project?
So consumables would be considered raw materials or inventory that would end up as being part of the end product. But for pilot scale machinery, we would need a bit more information as to what it relates to, whether it's test equipment or equipment that's being procured to help grow the production. So maybe we can reach out to the person who asked that question and just get a bit more information to guide them.
Okay. Awesome. That is, yeah, that is all the questions. Hopefully we've answered them all. For the 1, 2, 3 that we haven't quite, and maybe there's a couple of connections here, we're happy. I tend to put up project@ngen.ca because that means that at least we are ensured that someone's going to catch that email if you've got a very specific project question. But my email's there as well. So do feel free to email me as well, and we'll try and get any future questions or connect opportunities. We'll get these slides up on the event page as well, and I look forward to seeing any of you on the 17th of November for the IP workshop. We really appreciate your time today. Hopefully this has been useful, and as I say, the next workshop on the 12th, we're likely to have more of a feasibility study pilot project focus, and we'll take on board your feedback and we'll try and refine what we're doing to make it more efficient for you as well. So really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing your applications as they're coming in. I'm looking forward to connecting with you more one-on-one as you start evolving your ideas and want to reach out. So thank you very much, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks.